The recording device sat on the table between them, its small red light blinking steadily. Vecthar stared at it for a long moment, his three-fingered hand resting on the cold metal surface. Across from him, the young historian waited patiently, her data pad ready. She was Keldrith like him, but she had never seen war. Her carapace was smooth and unmarked, a bright blue that spoke of youth and peace. Vekthar's carapace was different. It was scarred and dull, the color faded to a muddy gray. Each mark told a story he wished he could forget. He was old now, 70 cycles past his prime, but his memories remained sharp as broken glass. The facility around them was quiet. Sanctuary Prime had been built after the war as a neutral ground, a place where former enemies could meet without fear. The walls were white and sterile, designed to calm rather than intimidate. Through the window, Vecthar could see the gardens where humans and Keldrith walked together, sharing the same paths. It still seemed strange to him even after 15 years of peace. "Are you ready to begin?" the historian asked softly. Her name was Selrian, and she had told him that she was collecting stories from veterans on all sides of the war. She wanted to preserve the truth before the last generation who remembered it passed away. Vecthar flexed his fingers, feeling the stiffness in his joints. "I am ready," he said. "But you must understand something first. Most of us who fought the humans, we do not speak of it. Not because we are ashamed, though some of us are. We do not speak of it because the memories are too heavy. The weight of what we saw, what we did, what was done to us. It breaks something inside." Selrian nodded, making a note on her pad. "I have heard this from others. They say the human war was different from other conflicts. Can you explain why?" Vecthar made a clicking sound, the Keldrith equivalent of a bitter laugh. "Different? Yes, that is one word for it. Nightmare is another. Hell is what the humans call it, and they would know. They brought it with them." He paused, gathering his thoughts. Where to begin? How to explain to someone who had never seen combat what it meant to fight an enemy that did not value their own lives, an enemy that turned every disadvantage into a weapon? Before the war started, the Confederation had complete intelligence on Earth and its colonies. We knew everything about them. Their technology was primitive. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were simple metal projectiles that barely scratched our shields. They had no energy weapons, no antimatter cores, no quantum communications. By every measure we used to evaluate military capability, they should have surrendered the moment we entered their system. Vekthar's secondary eyes closed as he remembered those early briefings. The commanders had been so confident, so certain. We had 30 worlds in the Confederation. We had fought and won wars against 6 different species. We had a fleet of over 2,000 ships. Humanity had 5 colonies and maybe 300 vessels that could barely qualify as military craft. The war should have lasted a month. Instead, it lasted 5 years and cost us everything that mattered. Selrian leaned forward, her interest evident. "What happened in the first battle?" "The records say it took place near Jupiter." "Yes, Jupiter, their largest planet." Vekthar's voice became distant, as if he were seeing through the window into the past rather than at the peaceful gardens. "I was not there for that battle. I was assigned to the second wave. But I spoke to survivors afterward, the ones who could still speak anyway. Many of them could not." He continued, his words coming slower now, each one pulled from a place he tried to keep locked. "The Confederation sent a demand to the human government. Surrender and accept vassal status or be destroyed. We gave them 1 week to decide. We expected them to negotiate, to ask for terms, to try to buy time. That is what every other species had done. But the humans sent only 1 word in response, no, just that single word. Our commanders thought it was a communication error. They sent the message again. The humans replied with the same word, no, so we prepared for war." Vecthar stood up slowly, his legs protesting the movement. He walked to the window and looked out at the humans walking in the garden. There was a male with dark skin and gray hair, walking with a female who laughed at something he said. Normal people living normal lives. It was hard to connect them with the creatures he had fought. The first battle began when our fleet arrived at their outer defense stations. We had 30 warships. They had 5. Our smallest cruiser had more firepower than all of their ships combined. The battle should have ended in minutes. Our admiral sent another surrender demand. This time the humans answered with weapons fire. He turned back to face Selrian. "You understand, in civilized warfare, when you are outnumbered 6-1, you retreat. You preserve your forces for a better position. You negotiate. You do not attack. But the humans attacked. All 5 ships came directly at us, full acceleration, no hesitation. Our sensors registered that their crews were broadcasting something on all frequencies. Music. They were playing music as they charged toward their deaths. Vecthar sat down again, feeling suddenly tired. One of their ships was commanded by a man named Jack Sullivan. His vessel was smaller than the others, a converted cargo hauler with weapons bolted to its hull. Our tactical systems did not even classify it as a military threat, but Sullivan did not care about our classifications. When our ships destroyed his engines and weapons, when his hull was breached and half his crew was dead, he did not surrender. He used his remaining maneuvering thrusters to ram his ship into our flagship. The historian's eyes widened. He deliberately crashed into your ship? Yes, at full speed. The impact destroyed both vessels. 3,000 of our soldiers died instantly. Sullivan and his entire crew of 200 were killed. But they took 15 times their number with them. That was our first lesson about humans. They do not calculate acceptable losses. They calculate acceptable sacrifices. Vecthar rubbed his scarred carapace, feeling the ridge where a human weapon had nearly ended his life years ago. Another ship was commanded by a female named Lisa Grant. She was a civilian before the war, a merchant captain. When the battle started, she had only basic training. Her ship was hit early, her weapons destroyed, her hull cracked open to space. She had time to evacuate, time to surrender. Instead, she set her ship on a collision course with our cruiser and manually overloaded her reactor core. The explosion was visible from Earth, they said. It destroyed Grant's ship and our cruiser completely. Another 3,000 dead. And Grant herself, along with her crew of 150. They chose death and they chose to take us with them. Celrian was quiet for a moment, processing this. But why? Why would they throw away their lives like that? Vecthar's laugh was harsh. That is what every Confederation soldier asked. We could not understand it. In our culture, in every culture we had encountered, warriors fight to live. They retreat when necessary, surrender when overwhelmed, preserve themselves to fight another day. But humans do not think this way. They fight to win, yes, but more than that. They fight to make sure that even in death they hurt you, even in defeat they cost you dearly. The first battle at Jupiter lasted 6 hours. We destroyed all 5 human ships. We suffered 4 vessels destroyed and 8 more damaged. By traditional military accounting, we won. We held the field, but we lost 12,000 soldiers. The humans lost perhaps 800, and every one of those 800 killed 15 of us before they died. Vecthar looked directly at Celrian. That night, in the medical bays, I helped treat the wounded. I saw soldiers with injuries I had never seen before. Burns from human chemical weapons. Wounds from primitive metal projectiles that shredded flesh in ways our energy weapons did not. But worse than the physical injuries were the psychological ones. I saw a commander who had been decorated in 3 previous wars, a veteran of 20 battles sitting in a corner and shaking. He kept saying the same thing over and over. They wanted to die. They wanted to die. That was the first battle, and it was the easiest one we ever fought. Vecthar took a long drink from the water container on the table. His throat was dry from talking, and the memories made him feel sick. But Celrian was waiting, her data pad ready, and he had agreed to tell the whole truth. The young needed to know. The galaxy needed to remember. After the first battle, our commanders held a strategy meeting. I was there as a junior tactical officer. We analyzed what had happened, trying to understand the human tactics. Our admiral said that the humans had simply panicked, that their suicidal attacks were the result of poor training and desperation. He believed that once they saw the true power of the Confederation, they would surrender. Vecthar shook his head slowly. We were wrong. So terribly wrong. The humans were not panicking. They were teaching us what kind of war this would be. He settled back in his chair, his mind returning to those dark days. The next major engagement happened 2 weeks later, near the human colony on Mars. We sent a larger force this time, 50 ships. The humans had managed to gather 12 vessels to defend the colony. Again, we outnumbered them. Again, we had superior technology. And again, we thought victory would be simple. The battle began like the first one. The humans attacked immediately, no hesitation. But this time, their tactics were different. They had learned from the first battle, too. They knew they could not win through conventional fighting, so they did not try. Vecthar's voice became quieter, as if speaking too loudly would make the memories more real. One of their ships, commanded by a man named Kyle Bennett, approached our formation at high speed. Our sensors showed that the ship's life support had been deliberately vented. The entire crew was in emergency suits with only minutes of oxygen remaining. They were already dead. They just had not stopped moving yet. Bennett's ship crashed through our defensive line. His crew used magnetic grapples to attach themselves to our hull. Then they cut through with plasma torches, crude tools meant for repair work, not combat, but effective. They breached our ship in 4 locations simultaneously. The historian looked confused. But if their life support was gone, how did they fight? They did not need to fight for long. Each human carried explosives strapped to their bodies. They ran through our corridors into our critical systems, our reactor rooms, our command centers, and then they detonated themselves. 30 humans killed themselves and took 800 of us with them. They turned their own bodies into weapons. Vecthar stood again, unable to sit still with these memories. He paced slowly, his old legs carrying him back and forth. I was on one of the ships nearby. We could hear the emergency broadcasts from the ship Bennett attacked. The screaming, the explosions, the silence that followed. It took less than 10 minutes from breach to total destruction. Bennett and his entire crew died, but they took one of our heavy cruisers with them. That same battle, we faced another human commander, a female named Amy Rogers. She led a boarding party that targeted our flagship. But her tactics were different. She did not use explosives. She used something worse. Information warfare. Celrian looked up from her notes. What do you mean? Vecthar stopped pacing and gripped the back of his chair. Rogers and her team of 20 humans breached our flagship through a damaged section. But instead of attacking critical systems, they went straight for our data cores. They uploaded a virus into our combat network. A simple virus, really. It just scrambled our targeting computers. But in the middle of a battle with dozens of ships trying to coordinate their fire, it was devastating. We started shooting at each other, our own ships fighting our own forces. The confusion lasted only a few minutes before we shut down the network and switched to manual targeting. But in those minutes, we destroyed 3 of our own vessels. Rogers and her team all died when we vented that section of the ship to space. But they had already accomplished their mission. He returned to his seat, feeling the weight of years and guilt. By the end of that battle, we had driven the humans away from Mars. We occupied the colony. We won by traditional measures, but we lost 9 ships and over 20,000 soldiers. The humans lost all 12 of their vessels and maybe 3,000 people. And still, every human killed 7 of us before they fell. Vekthar's voice grew harder, anger mixing with the pain of memory. Our commanders realized then that this war would not be quick. They sent for reinforcements. They called in veteran units from other sectors. They brought in psychological specialists to help soldiers cope with the stress of fighting an enemy that embraced death, and they began developing new doctrines specifically for fighting humans. One of these doctrines was to avoid close combat at all costs. Humans were physically weaker than Kaldrith, smaller and more fragile, but they fought with a ferocity that made up for their weakness. I saw a human soldier, a male named Chris Turner, continue fighting after losing an arm. He used his remaining hand to fire his weapon until he bled out. I saw a female, her name was Kate Phillips, drag herself across a deck with both legs broken, just to reach a control panel and sabotage our life support. We learned to fear close combat. Our soldiers would rather fire into a room full of hostages than enter it if they knew a single human fighter was inside. Because even one human could kill a dozen Kaldrith before being stopped. They fought like demons, like creatures possessed by something beyond reason. Celrian was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was uncertain. But surely not all humans fought this way. There must have been some who surrendered, some who valued their lives. Vekthar's expression was bleak. Yes, some surrendered. In the early battles, we took prisoners. Wounded humans, damaged ships, isolated outposts. We thought that treating prisoners well would encourage others to surrender, to show them that giving up was not shameful. This was another mistake. He pulled up his sleeve, showing a deep scar that ran along his arm. This is from a human prisoner, a female named Laura Bennett. She was a doctor, captured when we took a medical station. She seemed cooperative, even friendly. She helped treat our wounded soldiers, showed no resistance. We thought she had accepted her situation. We were fools. After 2 weeks, Bennett had gained enough trust to move freely in the medical bay. One night, she poisoned the medication supplies. 17 of our soldiers died before we discovered what she had done. She showed no remorse when we confronted her. She said that she was a doctor, yes, but she was a human first. And every human was a soldier, whether they wore a uniform or not. Vekthar's hand moved unconsciously to another scar on his chest. We executed her. What else could we do? But the damage was done. After that, we could not trust any human prisoner. We could not trust human doctors, human civilians, human children, because any of them might be a weapon waiting for the right moment to strike. The psychological impact was worse than the physical casualties. Our soldiers stopped sleeping properly. They saw threats everywhere. A wounded human on the ground might have a grenade hidden under their body. A surrendering human might be trying to get close enough to detonate an explosive. Even dead humans were dangerous because sometimes they were not really dead, just waiting for someone to come close enough to kill. He looked at Selrian directly. Do you understand what this does to a soldier? To live every moment in fear, knowing that any mistake could be your last? To see an enemy that never stops, never rests, never gives up? Our troops began suffering from what the humans call shell shock. Veteran soldiers with decades of experience would break down, refuse to fight, harm themselves to avoid deployment. The humans called it post-traumatic stress disorder. We had no name for it because we had never encountered it before, not on this scale. Vekthar's voice dropped to almost a whisper. There was a battle at the asteroid belt about 6 months into the war. I was there for that one. We were escorting a supply convoy, 60 cargo ships with 15 warships as protection. A single human vessel appeared on our sensors, just one. A small fighter, barely big enough for 2 crew members. Our commander laughed. He said it was probably a scout, maybe a sacrifice to gather intelligence on our movements. The fighter approached at high speed. We fired on it, but the pilot was skilled. He dodged most of our shots, took damage, but kept coming. When he was close enough, he broadcast a message. Just 2 words. Remember us. Then he rammed his fighter into our largest cargo ship at full velocity. The explosion was nuclear. The pilot had turned his reactor into a bomb. The blast destroyed the cargo ship and damaged 5 others. Hundreds of tons of supplies, enough to sustain our forces for a month, gone in an instant. The fighter pilot died, of course. His name was Greg Murphy. Just one man, killing himself to hurt us, and it worked. Vekthar stood and walked to the window again. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the gardens in shades of orange and red. That was when I truly understood what we were fighting. Not an army, not a nation, but an idea. The idea that death in service of your people is the highest honor. That defeat with dignity is better than victory through submission. That one person willing to sacrifice everything can change the course of a war. And that idea was impossible to defeat with weapons or tactics. Because how do you fight an enemy that has already accepted death? How do you? The sun had fully set now, and the facility's lights came on automatically, casting a soft glow through the interview room. Vekthar remained at the window, watching the darkness claim the gardens. Selrian waited patiently, understanding that these memories were not easy to share. Finally, the old soldier returned to his seat, his movements slow and deliberate. The space battles were terrible, he said quietly, but they were not the worst part of the war. The worst part came after we won them, after we controlled human space, after we occupied their colonies. He paused, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. The Confederation High Command believed that once we held the major human settlements, the war would end. We had done this before with other species. You occupy their worlds, demonstrate your power, and they accept the new reality. Within a generation, they integrate into the Confederation peacefully. This is how civilization works. But humans are not civilized, not in the way we understand the word. Vekthar took another drink of water before continuing. I was assigned to the occupation force on Mars at a settlement called New Arizona. It was a mining colony, home to about 40,000 humans. We stationed 5,000 troops there. 5,000 trained soldiers with advanced weapons and armor against 40,000 civilians. The ratio seemed more than adequate. For the first week, everything was quiet. The humans seemed to accept our presence. They went to work in the mines. They stayed in their homes. They followed our rules. Our commander was pleased. He sent reports back saying that the occupation was proceeding smoothly, that these humans were more reasonable than the ones we had fought in space. Vekthar's expression darkened. Then the attacks began. Small ones at first. A supply depot exploded. A patrol went missing. Communication lines were cut. We thought it was just minor resistance, nothing organized. We were wrong again. The human resistance was not led by soldiers. It was led by ordinary people. There was a farmer named Paul Henderson. Before the war, he grew food in underground greenhouses. He knew nothing about combat, nothing about military tactics, but he knew about mining explosives because his brother worked in the mines, and he knew about the tunnels that connected different parts of the colony. Henderson built bombs from mining charges and fertilizer from his farm. Simple devices, but effective. He planted them along routes our patrols used in buildings where we held meetings near our supply storage. In 1 month, Henderson's bombs killed over 300 of our soldiers. We never caught him. He died when one of his devices detonated early, but by then he had taught dozens of others how to make them. Salrian looked troubled. But surely your forces could protect against such simple weapons. Vecthar made that bitter clicking sound again. We tried. We changed our patrol routes randomly. We searched buildings. We scanned for explosives, but the humans adapted faster than we did, and there were so many of them. For every human we killed, 2 more took their place. For every bomb maker we caught, 5 more learned the craft. Then there was Michelle Carter. She was a teacher at a human school. Young children, ages 5 to 12. We allowed the school to remain open because we thought it would make the occupation seem less harsh, show the humans that we were not monsters, that life could continue normally under Confederation rule. He shook his head slowly. Carter turned her students into an intelligence network. Children would play near our bases, counting troops and vehicles. They would overhear conversations between soldiers. They would note which buildings we used, which routes we traveled. The information would go back to Carter, who passed it to the resistance fighters. By the time we realized what was happening, the children had mapped our entire operation. We arrested Carter. She never denied what she had done. She said that she was teaching her students the most important lesson. Freedom is worth any price. We executed her, and her students continued the work. We could not arrest children. We tried threats, intimidation, but it did not work. The humans did not fear for their children's safety more than they valued their freedom. Vecthar stood and began pacing again, the old habit returning. The worst was Stephen Walsh. He was a doctor at the colony's main hospital. We needed the hospital to remain operational, because our own medical facilities were overwhelmed with casualties from the resistance attacks. So we allowed Walsh and his staff to continue treating humans, while our doctors treated Confederation wounded in the same building. For 3 months, Walsh treated our wounded soldiers. He was professional, courteous, efficient. He saved many Kaldrith lives. Our medical officer praised him, said he was an example of how humans and Kaldrith could work together peacefully. Then our soldiers started dying from infections that should have been easily treatable. Simple wounds became fatal. Recovery times increased. Soldiers would survive surgery only to die days later from mysterious complications. It took us too long to realize what Walsh was doing. He was treating our soldiers, yes, but he was using contaminated equipment. He was administering medications that were just slightly off. Enough to cause complications, but not enough to be immediately obvious. He was deliberately infecting wounds during surgery, and he did it all while smiling and appearing helpful. Selrian's expression showed horror, but he was a doctor. He took an oath to heal people. Yes, Vecthar said, an oath to heal people. And to him we were not people. We were invaders, enemies, and every Kaldrith he killed in that hospital was one less soldier threatening his colony. When we finally discovered what he was doing, we searched his office. We found a journal where he had recorded every Confederation soldier he had killed through his medical care. Over 200 names. He called it his contribution to the war effort. The old Kaldrith sat down heavily. We executed Walsh too, but the damage was done. After that, our soldiers refused treatment from human medical staff. We had to bring in all our own doctors, our own equipment, our own supplies. It strained our resources even further, and it made our soldiers paranoid. If doctors could be enemies, if teachers could be spies, if farmers could be bomb makers, then anyone could be a threat. But the absolute worst case was on Europa, where I spent most of my service during the occupation. Europa was a small colony, only 10,000 humans. We stationed 2,000 troops there. It seemed like more than enough. It was not. Vekthar's voice became even quieter, and Selrian had to lean forward to hear him. The humans on Europa developed a tactic that still haunts my dreams. They would volunteer for work in our facilities, claiming they wanted to cooperate with the occupation. We would assign them tasks, simple labor, cleaning, food service, and then When they were close to important targets, they would detonate explosives hidden inside their own bodies. The first time it happened, I was there, a young human female, maybe 20 years old. Her name was Emma Davis. She had been working in our command center for 2 weeks, cleaning floors, emptying waste containers. She was quiet, polite, never caused any trouble. Our officers barely noticed her. One morning, during a strategy meeting with all our senior commanders present, Emma walked into the conference room. She was not supposed to be there, but she was just a cleaner, so the guards let her pass. She walked to the center of the room, looked at our commanding officer, and said 3 words, "For humanity's future." Then she triggered the explosive vest hidden under her clothing. Vekthar's hands were shaking now. The explosion killed Emma instantly. It also killed our commander, 6 senior officers and 8 guards. 70 more soldiers were wounded. The command structure for the entire Europa occupation was destroyed in seconds. All because one human female was willing to turn herself into a weapon. After that, we tried to screen humans more carefully. We used scanners, physical searches, psychological evaluations, but the humans found ways around everything. They would swallow small explosives that would not show on scanners. They would use organic compounds that our sensors could not detect. They would wait weeks or months building trust before striking. We could not trust anyone. Every human interaction became a potential threat. We stopped allowing humans to work in our facilities. We stopped allowing them near our soldiers. We essentially created a complete separation between occupiers and occupied, but this only made the resistance stronger, because now the humans had nothing to lose. He looked at Celrian with tired eyes. Do you understand what it means to live like that? To know that the person serving your food might poison it, that the child playing nearby might be gathering intelligence, that the wounded civilian asking for help might explode when you get close. It destroys the mind. It breaks the spirit. Our soldiers stopped being warriors and became paranoid survivors, jumping at shadows, firing at anything that moved. The Confederation sent more troops, better equipment, harsher rules. We instituted curfews, restricted movement, punished entire communities for the actions of individuals. Nothing worked. Every new restriction created more resistance fighters. Every execution inspired more attacks. Every victory was temporary. Every quiet day was just preparation for the next assault. Vekthar's voice was barely a whisper now. The humans had a saying that spread among our troops. Every human is a weapon. Every space is a... Vekthar stood and walked to a small cabinet in the corner of the room. He opened it and pulled out a container of something stronger than water. He poured a small amount into a cup and drank it quickly, then offered some to Celrian. She declined politely. He sat down again, the strong drink seeming to steady him for what came next. By the 3rd year of the war, the Confederation controlled almost all of human space. We held Earth's orbit, Mars, Europa, the asteroid colonies, everything. On paper, we had won, but we were losing. Slowly, steadily, impossibly, we were losing. He set the cup down carefully. The problem was simple. Every world we occupied required massive garrison forces. Every supply line needed full military escort. Every day brought new casualties. We had started the war with 2,000 ships. After 3 years, we had fewer than 800 still operational. We had lost over half our fleet, not to major battles, but to endless small attacks, guerrilla strikes, suicide runs. And the humans kept fighting. We destroyed their shipyards, but they built new ones in asteroid caves. We blockaded their supply routes, but they created new ones through paths we thought impossible. We killed their leaders, but new ones emerged immediately. It was like fighting water. Every blow passed through without resistance, and the water flowed back stronger than before. Vekthar's expression became thoughtful, almost respectful. Then came the battle at the asteroid belt, the big one, not the small skirmishes we had fought before. This was a coordinated assault by the humans using tactics we had never seen. A human commander named Greg Murphy led it. He was a civilian before the war, a cargo hauler captain. But war had turned him into something else, something terrifying. Murphy gathered every mining ship, cargo hauler, and transport vessel the humans could spare. Hundreds of ships, none of them designed for combat. He stripped out everything unnecessary. Life support beyond a few hours, crew quarters, safety systems. He filled them with the heaviest materials he could find. Rock metal, ice from the comets. He turned them into kinetic missiles. Celrian looked confused. But surely your defenses could destroy such slow, unarmored targets.
That is what we thought, Vekthar said.
But Murphy did not approach slowly. He used gravity assist from the planets, solar sails to catch radiation pressure, everything he could think of to build velocity. By the time his ships reached our fleet, they were moving at incredible speeds, faster than any normal spacecraft could achieve, and they could not slow down, could not turn, could not stop. They were bullets and we were the target. Each ship had a minimal crew, just 1 or 2 humans to make final course corrections. Then they would evacuate through small pods at the last moment, most of the time. Sometimes they stayed aboard to make sure the impact was accurate. Murphy himself piloted one of the lead ships. He could have evacuated. He chose not to. Vekthar's voice carried a strange mixture of horror and admiration. Murphy's ship hit our command carrier at almost 10% of light speed. The kinetic energy was devastating. The carrier was one of our largest vessels, over 2 kilometers long, with enough firepower to destroy a planet. Murphy's ship went through it like it was paper. The carrier exploded so violently that debris destroyed 3 nearby cruisers. In total, Murphy's attack destroyed or severely damaged 41 Confederation ships. The humans lost 230 vessels and about 500 crew members. By any calculation, we still had superior numbers. But the psychological impact was enormous. The humans had proven they could strike anywhere, using weapons we could not defend against, weapons made from nothing more than rocks and determination. He paused, collecting his thoughts. But that was not the worst of what happened in the 3rd year. The worst was what a human scientist did. Her name was Laura Bennett, no relation to the doctor I mentioned before. She was a biological researcher before the war, working on agricultural projects. During the war, she turned her knowledge toward weapons. The Confederation military relied on a specific food source, a fungus that we cultivated in massive quantities. It was efficient, nutritious, and easy to grow. Most of our food supply came from these fungus farms, both at home and at our forward bases. Bennett learned about this through captured supply documents. Vekthar's expression became grim. She created a prion. Do you know what that is? A misfolded protein that spreads through biological systems, causing other proteins to misfold. It made our food supply toxic, indigestible, and it spread through contamination. One infected batch could contaminate an entire farm within days. Bennett released her prion into captured Confederation supply ships. We distributed the contaminated food throughout our fleet and our occupied territories before anyone realized what was happening. Within 2 months, 70% of our food supply was unusable. Soldiers began starving. We had to divert massive resources to importing food from the core worlds, food that had to travel through human-controlled space where it was vulnerable to attack. Celerian was writing quickly now, her stylus moving rapidly across the data pad. How did you discover it was deliberate? Could it not have been natural? We found Bennett's research facility on a hidden asteroid base. She had documented everything, including video logs explaining what she had done and why. She said that if humans could not eat, could not survive, then neither would we. She died when we destroyed the base, but her weapon continued spreading for months afterward. Some historians estimate that the food crisis caused by Bennett's prion killed more Confederation soldiers than all the space battles combined. Vekthar refilled his cup and drank again. By this point, the Confederation was fighting 3 other wars against different species. Small conflicts manageable under normal circumstances, but humanity did something unexpected. They sent envoys to our other enemies. They shared intelligence, tactics, and most importantly, they shared their doctrine of total warfare. Suddenly, we faced suicide attacks on all 4 fronts. Species that had fought conventionally for decades began using human tactics, ramming attacks, guerrilla warfare, biological weapons, civilian resistance. The entire character of galactic warfare changed because humans showed everyone else that survival was not the only goal. That making the enemy pay for every inch of ground was more important than preserving your own forces. He leaned back in his chair, looking exhausted. Our economy began collapsing. We were spending more resources on the wars than our entire gross production. Soldiers were deserting. Colonies were refusing to send troops or supplies. Our government faced internal protests, even riots. The Confederation was eating itself from within while humans kept pressing from without. Then came the final blow, though we did not recognize it as such at the time. A human negotiator contacted us through neutral channels. His name was Chris Turner. He had been a soldier, had lost both legs in combat, but somehow survived. He came to our flagship in a small shuttle, alone and unarmed. Vekthar's eyes grew distant. Turner said that humanity was willing to negotiate peace, but not surrender. Never surrender. He said that we could continue the war for another 10 years, another 20, another 100. We might eventually kill every last human, but the cost would destroy the Confederation completely. Every human would take 10 of us with them. Every world we held would bleed us dry. Every day of war would weaken us while strengthening our other enemies. Our commanders laughed at him. They said we had already won, that we controlled human space, that surrender was their only option. Turner just smiled. He said that control was an illusion. He said that every Confederation soldier on every occupied world was a prisoner, not an occupier. That we were trapped by our own victory, unable to advance, unable to retreat, unable to achieve anything except slow death. Then Turner played a recording. It was from our own intelligence services, classified reports they had intercepted. Reports that showed the true cost of the war, the casualty numbers, the economic drain, the psychological damage to our troops, the political instability at home, everything we had been hiding from our own population. He said that if we did not agree to peace, he would broadcast these reports across the entire Confederation. Let our people see what their government had hidden from them. Vekthar's voice became very quiet. Turner left that day. We did not arrest him, did not stop him, because we knew he was right. We had won every major battle and lost the war. We controlled the territory but not the people. We had superior technology but inferior will, and most importantly, we had learned that some enemies cannot be defeated because they refuse to be beaten. Within a month, secret negotiations began. Within 6 months, we started withdrawing from human space. We called it a strategic redeployment, a consolidation of forces, but everyone knew the truth. The Confederation had been defeated by a species we should have conquered in weeks, defeated not by their weapons or their numbers, but by their absolute unwillingness to accept subjugation. He looked at Selrian with ancient eyes. That is the turning point you asked about. Not a single battle, but a slow realization that victory was impossible, that every day of war made us weaker while making them stronger, that the humans had weaponized suffering itself, turned their... The interview room had grown darker as night fully settled over Sanctuary Prime. Vekthar sat in shadow now, only his scarred carapace catching the light from the recording device. Selrian had filled dozens of pages in her datapad, but she could sense they were approaching the end of the story. The old soldier seemed both exhausted and relieved, as if speaking these truths had lifted a burden he had carried for too long. The withdrawal was supposed to be organized and dignified, Vekthar began, his voice tired but steady. We told ourselves it was a strategic decision, a reallocation of resources to more important fronts. We created elaborate justifications and military rationales, but the truth was simpler. We were running away. The mighty Confederation, conquerors of 6 species, was fleeing from a primitive enemy that we should have crushed. He shifted in his seat, old bones protesting. I was part of the last garrison to leave Mars. We had been there for almost 4 years, fighting daily against human resistance. When the orders came to evacuate, there was no sadness among the troops. Only relief, even joy. We were leaving the nightmare behind. Or so we thought. The humans did not make it easy. They attacked our evacuation convoys, destroyed supply depots we were trying to empty, ambushed rear guard units. They wanted to make sure we remembered them, that we understood we were not leaving by choice but by necessity. A human resistance leader named Alex Morgan led the final assault on our Mars headquarters. His forces killed over 300 soldiers in the last week of occupation. Vekthar's expression was haunted. Morgan himself survived the war. I heard he became a politician later, advocating for peace between our species. The human who killed hundreds of my comrades spent his later years arguing for reconciliation. I still do not understand how they do that, how they can be so violent and so forgiving at the same time. He took another small drink from his cup. The retreat took 8 months. Every day brought new casualties, new losses, new humiliations. The humans followed us all the way to the edge of their space, striking at stragglers, destroying damaged ships, never letting us forget that we were defeated. When the last Confederation vessel crossed back into our territory, we had lost over 60% of our military strength and nearly 40% of our economic capacity. But the physical losses were not the worst part. The psychological damage was far more severe. Over half of all soldiers who fought against humans showed signs of what we now call combat trauma syndrome. Nightmares, anxiety, paranoia, depression, rage. Some soldiers could not adjust to civilian life. They harmed themselves or others. Some simply stopped functioning, trapped in memories of the war. Vekthar gestured to himself. I am one of the fortunate ones. I can function. I can speak about it. Many cannot. There are entire medical facilities now dedicated to treating veterans of the human war. Nothing in our history prepared us for this kind of psychological injury. The humans had a name for it, post-traumatic stress disorder. They had experience with it because they had been fighting wars like this for their entire history. We had not. We were not prepared. Selrian looked up from her notes. But the war ended 15 years ago. Surely things have improved since then. Some things, yes. The nightmares are less frequent now. The panic attacks happen less often. But the memories never fade. I still see the faces of humans I killed. I still hear the explosions. I still feel the fear that any moment might be my last. These things do not heal completely. They just become easier to live with. He was quiet for a moment, then continued. The war also changed the entire galaxy. Remember, I said the humans shared their tactics with our other enemies. Those wars continued after we withdrew from human space, but now all our enemies fought like humans. Suicide attacks, guerrilla warfare, civilian resistance, biological weapons. Everything we had learned to fear from humanity became standard practice across multiple fronts. The Confederation lost 2 more wars in the years following the human conflict, not because we were militarily weak, but because our soldiers could not handle the psychological pressure. They had been broken by fighting humans, and they could not face similar tactics again. Our military had to be completely rebuilt from the foundation, with new training focused on psychological resilience and unconventional warfare. Vekthar stood and walked to the window again. In the darkness outside, he could see lights from the human residential areas. Families going about their evening routines, children playing, people living in peace. I defected during the final year of the war, he said quietly. I was captured by a human patrol led by a soldier named Kate Phillips. I expected to be executed. I had killed humans, many humans. I deserved death by their laws and mine. But Phillips did not kill me. She and her second-in-command, a male named Alex Morgan, treated my wounds. They gave me food and water. They asked me questions about Confederation tactics, and I answered truthfully because I was too tired to resist. But they never tortured me, never threatened me, never treated me cruelly. When I asked why, Phillips said something I will never forget. He turned back to face Selrian. She said that humans fight with everything they have when they must. They will die, kill, destroy without hesitation when their freedom is threatened. But once the threat is gone, once the enemy is defeated or surrenders, the violence stops. She said that cruelty to prisoners is weakness, not strength. That treating enemies with dignity after battle is how you build real peace. I did not believe her then. I thought it was manipulation, psychological warfare. But over the following weeks, as I recovered in their prisoner facility, I saw it was true. Human guards treated us fairly. Human doctors healed our injuries. Human officials processed our cases individually, not as a group. They separated soldiers who had committed atrocities from those who had just followed orders. They were fierce in battle and merciful in victory. I had never seen such a combination before. Vekthar returned to his seat one last time. When the war ended, I was given a choice. Return to the Confederation or apply for asylum on a human world. I chose to stay. Not because I love humans or because I am ashamed of my people. I stayed because I could not go back to a society that did not understand what I had experienced. Only other veterans understood, and the humans who had fought us understood better than anyone. I have lived on this world for 13 years now. I work as a consultant, helping train peacekeepers in conflict resolution. I teach them what I learned from the war, that violence is sometimes necessary but should never be the first choice. That treating all beings with dignity prevents more conflicts than weapons ever can. That the true strength is not in your ability to hurt others, but in your ability to stop hurting them. He looked directly at the recording device, as if speaking to future viewers rather than just Selrian. This is what I want everyone to understand about the human war. Humanity did not win because they were stronger or smarter or more advanced. They won because they understood something that we did not. They understood that freedom is worth more than life itself. That a people who accept subjugation are already dead, just still breathing. That death in defense of your principles is more valuable than life in surrender to someone else's. We lost because we could not understand this. We thought survival was the highest goal. We thought any rational being would choose life over death, submission over destruction. But humans are not rational in that way. They are passionate, idealistic, stubborn beyond measure. They would rather burn their entire civilization to ash than let someone else control it. Vekthar's voice grew stronger, more intense, and this is my warning to anyone who might encounter humanity in the future. If you value your people, if you care about your civilization, never go to war with humans unless you have no other choice. Because they will make you pay for every moment of conflict. They will turn every advantage you have against you. They will transform their weaknesses into weapons. They will never stop, never surrender, never accept defeat. You might win every battle. You might control every world. You might kill millions of them. But you will not win the war. Because humans do not fight for victory. They fight to ensure that even in defeat, you will regret ever finding them. That is not warfare as we understand it. That is something else entirely. That is making war itself so terrible, so costly, so painful, that the enemy begs for peace just to make it stop. He leaned back, suddenly looking every year of his age. I have nightmares still. I see the faces of humans I killed. Young ones, old ones, soldiers and civilians. I see Emma Davis walking into that conference room, saying those 3 words before she destroyed herself and everyone around her. I see Paul Henderson's workshop full of homemade bombs. I see Stephen Walsh's journal with 200 names of soldiers he killed while pretending to heal them. But I also see Kate Phillips bandaging my wounds. I see Alex Morgan bringing me food when I was too weak to stand. I see human children playing with Kaldrith children in these gardens, no fear, no hatred, just children being children. I see humans and Kaldrith working together, building together, living together in peace. Vekthar reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data chip. He placed it on the table between them. This contains my complete military,